She smiled as she handed her plate, but I could see her eyes burning with hatred. Part 1. I've been tending gardens for the rich folks of Napa Valley for years now, ever since I left the Marines. You'd be surprised how much you learn about people when you're pruning their roses or shaping their hedges. They think you're invisible, just another pair of hands in the dirt. But I see everything, their fights, their secrets, their lies. I don't judge, mind you. I just watch, listen, and keep my thoughts to myself. Well, mostly. There's one guy I talk to, Ethan, a good man with a heart bigger than his vineyard. He's the kind of client who doesn't treat you like hired help. And over time, we've become friends. We talk in the garden, away from prying eyes, about life, love, and the mess that comes with family. And let me tell you, his family's got a mess that could fill a book. This story ain't mine, but I'm telling it because I was there, clipping vines and sweeping paths when it all started. It's about Ethan, his wife Lori, and his sister Martha, a woman whose smile hides a venom I've seen in war zones. I knew she was trouble the first time I saw her, strutting through the estate like she owned it, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start at the beginning, back when the roses were still blooming and the poison was just a whisper in the air. It was a warm spring morning in 2025, the kind where the Napa sun paints everything gold. I was working the east garden of Ethan's estate, a sprawling mansion surrounded by vineyards that stretched as far as the eye could see. Ethan's a winemaker, one of the best, with a label that's on every fancy restaurant's menu from San Francisco to New York. He's 35, tall, with an easy grin that makes you trust him. He'd wander out sometimes while I worked, coffee mug in hand, and we'd shoot the breeze about the Marines, his business, or the latest drama in his family. That's how I learned about Martha. Martha's his younger sister, 33, a marketing hotshot who thinks she's the queen of Napa. She's got that polished, look blonde hair, designer dresses, the works, but there's a coldness to her. Like she's always sizing you up. Ethan told me she's been trying to run his life since they were kids. Back when he was 17, she pushed him to date her best friend Tiffany, a leggy brunette who's still in the picture, stirring up trouble. Ethan went along with it for a while, but he broke it off when he realized Martha was more interested in controlling him than in his happiness. At 23, she tried again, setting him up with another friend, but Ethan shut it down. "I'm not her puppet," he told me once, leaning against a trellis as I trimmed ivy. But she never stops trying. Martha didn't take kindly to Ethan's independence. When he started dating Lori, a 32-year-old interior designer with a warm laugh and eyes that could light up a room, Martha turned icy. Lori's not like the Napa Ilatesh, grounded, creative, the kind of woman who'd rather plant flowers than flaunt diamonds. Ethan fell hard for her, and I could see why. They'd walk the vineyard paths together, her hand in his, talking about their dreams. I'd catch him from the corner of my eye while I raked leaves, and it reminded me of what love's supposed to look like. But Martha, she saw Lori as a threat. I first noticed Martha's games when I was setting up for a family dinner at the estate. Ethan's parents, Christopher and Danielle, were hosting, and the place was buzzing with caterers and florists. I was arranging potted roses along the patio when Martha swept in, her heels clicking like gunfire. She was on her phone, complaining to someone about Lori. "She's not right for him," she said, loud enough for me to hear. "He deserves someone with class, not some artsy type who thinks she's special." I kept my head down, but I saw Lori nearby, arranging napkins, her face tightening. She didn't say a word, just kept working, but I knew it stung. That night, as I swept the paths after the guests left, Ethan found me by the fountain. "Martha's at it again," he said, running a hand through his hair. "She brought up Tiffany at dinner, right in front of Lori. Said she ran into her and invited her over by accident." "Who does that?" I leaned on my broom, listening. "Sounds like she's trying to stir the pot," I said. "You ever call her out on it?" Ethan sighed. "I have, but she plays the victim, says Lori's jealous, and I'm blind. My parents don't take her seriously, but it's wearing Lori down." I nodded, thinking of the Marine show. "You learn to spot trouble before it blows up." "Keep an eye on her," I told him. "People like that don't stop unless you make them." Lori tried to stay above it. She'd smile at Martha, include her in plans, even ask her opinion on decorating the estate. But Martha was relentless. I'd see her check Lori's Instagram stories, public ones, since Lori's a designer who posts her work, and if a guy commented, Martha would run to Ethan with wild stories. "She's posting indecent photos," she'd say, according to Ethan, who laughed it off when he told me. "Lori's just living her life," he said one afternoon, helping me move a heavy planter. But Martha's got this idea I should be with someone she picks, like I'm her project. I wiped sweat from my brow and looked at him. She's not just picking fights, Ethan. She's picking a war. Things escalated when Ethan and Lori got engaged. I was there, setting up lights for the engagement party in the vineyard. The place was magical string lights, white roses, a band playing soft jazz. When Ethan announced the engagement, everyone cheered, glasses clinking under the stars. Everyone except Martha. I saw her from across the lawn, standing stiff, her face like stone. Then, out of nowhere, she stood up, knocked over her chair, and stormed out. I kept working, stringing lights, but I heard the Whispers guests wondering what her deal was. Later, Ethan found me by the garden shed, his tie loosened, looking drained. Martha called me, crying, saying she should have been the first to know, he said. Said she's my closest family and I betrayed her by telling everyone at once. I set down my tools and leaned against the shed. Sounds like she wants to be the center of your world, I said. What's Lori think? Ethan shook his head. Lori's hurt. Martha sent her this creepy message telling her how to treat me right because she's the only woman in my life. Lori didn't even reply. I raised an eyebrow. That's not just jealousy. That's control. You gotta draw a line, man. Ethan nodded, but I could tell he was torn. Family's complicated, and he loved his sister, even if she was a thorn in his side. Martha didn't let up. She'd show up uninvited to wedding planning, criticizing Lori's choices. I was there when Lori was picking centerpieces with Danielle, Ethan's mom, in the garden. I was pruning nearby, close enough to hear Martha barge in and scoff. Those flowers are tacky, she said, smirking. No wonder you're not from here, Lori. This is why Ethan needs someone with taste. Lori's face flushed, but she kept her cool, saying, I like them, and so does Ethan. Danielle backed her up, but Martha just laughed and walked off. I caught Lori's eye as I clipped a hedge, and she gave me a small, tired smile. That woman had patience, but I knew it was wearing thin. One evening, after a long day of work, Ethan and I sat on the patio, the vineyard glowing under the moonlight. He opened a bottle of his best Cabernet and poured me a glassware for a client, but that's Ethan. Martha's pushing too far, he said, staring at the stars. She told me to dump Lori before we move in together, said she's got too many flaws. Can you believe that? I took a sip, the wine rich and smooth. I've seen her type, I said. She's not just protecting you, she's protecting her. Hold on you. Lori's a threat because she's got your heart. Ethan looked at me, his jaw tight. What do I do? She's my sister. I set my glass down. You love her, but you don't owe her your life. Stand by, Lori. Martha'll either back off or show her true colors. I didn't know then how far Martha would go, how her envy would turn to poison, literal poison, hidden in a plate of food meant for Lori. But I saw the signs, like I always do, working in the shadows of these big houses. The roses were still blooming that spring, but trouble was growing faster than the vines. And I'd be there, with my shears and my silence, watching it all unfold. Part 2. The Napa summer of 2025 was relentless, the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer over the vineyards. I was knee-deep in Ethan's garden, battling weeds that didn't know when to quit, but my mind was on the storm brewing inside his family. I'd been watching Martha's games for months now, her sharp tongue slicing at Lori like a knife through silk. Ethan and I had talked about it plenty out here among the roses and trellises, where the world felt quieter. He trusted me, maybe because I'd seen enough in the Marines to know when trouble's just a spark waiting for gasoline. And Martha, she was a whole damn inferno. Since the engagement party, things had gotten worse. Martha wasn't just needling Lori Inamoresh, was waging a campaign. I'd catch her at family gatherings, dropping sly comments about Lori's small-town taste or how Ethan's ex, Tiffany, was killing it in San Francisco. It was calculated, like she was planting seeds of doubt. Lori held her head high, but I could see the strain in her eyes when I'd pass her on the estate, hauling mulch or trimming hedges. She was fighting to keep her place in a family that Martha wanted to rule. One afternoon, I was setting up for Ethan and Lori's wedding rehearsal dinner, stringing lights across the vineyard's pergola. The place looked like a postcard, white linens, crystal glasses, the works. Ethan was nervous, pacing in his suit, but happy. Lori's my rock, he told me, grabbing a ladder to help me hang a lantern. I just wish Martha would let us breathe. I secured the light and glanced at him. She's not going to stop unless you make her, I said. You see how she looks at Lori like she's an intruder? Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. I know. I told her to back off, but she cries, says, I'm choosing Lori over family. It's exhausting. I clapped a shoulder. Family doesn't mean letting her run your life. You're building something with Lori. Protect it. The rehearsal dinner was where Martha turned up the heat. I was clearing empty wine bottles when I saw her corner Lori by the dessert table. She was all smiles, but her voice carried, "You sure you're ready for this, Lori? Ethan's got a big life, big expectations." Tiffany always knew how to handle it. Lori froze, her hand on a glass. "Ethan and I are happy, Martha," she said, voice steady but sharp. "Maybe focus on your own life." Martha's smile didn't budge, but her eyes flashed. "Just looking out for my brother," she said, then sauntered off. I caught Lori's gaze as I passed with the bottles. She looked like she'd just swallowed a nail but was too proud to spit it out. Later, as I swept the patio, Ethan found me. "Martha invited Tiffany to the wedding," he said, his voice low, like he was afraid the vines were listening. "Said it was a coincidence she ran into her. Who does that?" I leaned on my broom, the night air cool against my skin. "She's testing you," I said. "Wants to see if she can shake Lori. You gonna let her?" Ethan shook his head. "No way. Lori's my future, but I don't want a scene at the wedding." I looked him in the eye. "Then set boundaries now. Tell Martha she's a guest, not the director. Or she'll keep pushing." The wedding day was a spectacle, hundreds of guests, a string quartet, roses everywhere. I'd spent days getting the garden perfect, every petal in place. Lori was stunning in her dress, and Ethan couldn't stop grinning. But Martha stole the show in the worst way. She showed up in a floor-length black gown, like she was mourning the whole damn thing. I was adjusting a floor arch when I saw her gliding through the crowd, her face a mix of defiance and drama. Guests whispered, and I heard one say, "Is she serious? It's a wedding, not a funeral." I kept working, but I watched her. She went table to table, sighing about losing her brother to Lori, playing the victim like it was her job. I told Ethan about it later when we were alone in the garden, the reception still buzzing behind us. "She's making it about her," I said, clipping a stray vine. "That black dress? That's a statement, not a mistake." Ethan rubbed his temples. "Lori's furious but doesn't want to ruin the day. My mom called Martha out, but she just said she can wear what she wants." I shook my head. "She's not just wearing a dress. She's wearing her resentment. You let this slide, she'll think she's got power." Ethan looked out at the vineyard, the lights twinkling in the dusk. "I'm done letting her hurt Lori," he said. "I'm telling her she's out of the wedding party." That's when Lori drew the line. I was there, raking the lawn the next morning when she confronted Martha in the garden. Lori's voice was calm but ironclad. "You're not welcome at the rest of the wedding events," she said. "I'm done with your taunts and your games." Martha gasped like she'd been slapped. "You can't do that. I'm his sister." Lori didn't flinch. "And I'm his wife. You've made it clear you hate me, so stay away." Danielle, Ethan's mom, backed Lori up, saying, "You've gone too far, Martha." Martha's face twisted, and she stormed off, but not before hissing, "You'll regret this." Ethan told me about the fallout that evening as we sat on the vineyard stone bench, the air thick with the scent of jasmine. "Martha called me, sobbing, saying Lori humiliated her," he said. "She wants me to control my wife." "Can you believe that?" I chuckled, but it wasn't funny. "She's not crying because she's hurt," I said. "She's crying because she lost control. You backed Lori, right?" Ethan nodded. "Hell yeah." I told Martha she's not invited to the reception if she doesn't apologize. She sent Lori a text, but it's half-assed. Lori didn't even reply. I leaned back, looking at the stars. "Good, but don't let your guard down. She's not done." Martha showed up to the reception anyway, all fake smiles and forced politeness. I was clearing tables when I saw her, dressed in a less dramatic outfit, but still working the crowd, spinning her sob story. Ethan and Lori let it slide, not wanting to ruin the night, but I could tell it ate at them. The guests loved the pink and pastel decor, the wine flowing like a river, but Martha's presence was a shadow. I told Ethan as much a few days later when we were planting new vines. "She's like a weed," I said, digging into the soil. "You pull one, but the roots are still there, waiting to choke everything." Ethan laughed, but his eyes were serious. "I just want peace," he said, "for Lori, for me, for our future." Peace wasn't in the cards. Martha got married to Brandon, a lawyer with a quiet demeanor and a knack for staying out of her drama. I helped set up their small wedding at a nearby estate, and it was clear their marriage was shaky from the start. Brandon seemed worn down, like he was carrying Martha's baggage in his own. Ethan told me Martha was struggling to get pregnant, and it was eating her up. "She's obsessed with it," he said one morning, helping me load mulch. But instead of dealing with it, she's doubling down on Lori, keeps bringing up Tiffany like she's trying to rewrite my past. I wiped dirt from my hands. She's not just jealous of Lori's life, I said. She's jealous of her happiness. That's a dangerous kind of envy. I didn't know then how dangerous. I'd seen Martha's barbs, her schemes, but I hadn't seen the full depth of her resentment. Out here in the garden, where the vines grew strong and the roses bloomed, I thought I'd seen it all. But Martha was planning something darker, something that would turn a celebration into a nightmare, and I'd be there with my shears and my silence, watching the poison spread. Part 3. Fall in Napa Valley is a sight, grapevines turning gold and red, the air crisp with the promise of harvest. But in 2025, the beauty of Ethan's estate couldn't hide the rot spreading through his family. I'd been tending his gardens long enough to know trouble when I saw it, and Martha was trouble with a capital T. Her vendetta against Lori had gone from petty jabs to something uglier, and I wasn't the only one noticing. Ethan and I talked about it often, out in the vineyard where the world felt far away. He'd lean on a fence post, staring at the hills, while I pruned or planted, and we'd hash out the latest drama. I'd seen enough in the Marines to know when someone's playing a long game, and Martha was playing for keeps. After the wedding, things quieted down for a bit. Lori and Ethan settled into married life, and their son, Jordan, was born a bright-eyed kid who'd toddle after me in the garden, asking about worms and flowers. Lori was a natural mom, patient and warm, and Ethan was over the moon. I'd catch them on the patio, Jordan giggling between them, and it felt like they'd finally found their peace. But Martha, she was a storm cloud waiting to break. Her marriage to Brandon was crumbling, and her failure to get pregnant was like gasoline on her envy. She'd visit the estate, all smiles for Jordan, but her eyes would linger on Lori, cold and calculating. I first saw the shift one crisp October morning when I was raking leaves near the gazebo. Martha was over, supposedly to see Jordan, but she cornered Lori in the kitchen. I couldn't hear everything through the open window, but her tone was sharp. "You're so lucky, Lori," she said, voice dripping with something that wasn't kindness. "Everything just falls into your lap, doesn't it? Ethan, Jordan, this perfect life." Lori, wiping down counters, kept her cool. "We work hard, Martha. You know that." Martha laughed, brittle and mean. "Sure, but some people just get it all, don't they?" I kept raking, but my gut twisted. I'd heard that tone before, soldiers bitter about a promotion they didn't get, ready to lash out. Later, Ethan found me by the vineyard's irrigation system where I was fixing a leak. "Martha's acting weird again," he said, kicking at the dirt. "She's been nice to Jordan, but she's back to needling Lori. Told her she's too soft to raise a boy in Napa's circles." I wiped my hands on my jeans and looked at him. "She's not just needling," I said. "She's probing for weak spots. You see how she talks about Lori's life like it's a prize she didn't earn?" Ethan frowned. "Yeah, but it's worse now. She had a miscarriage last year, and it's like it broke something in her. She's obsessed with us, keeps asking about our plans, our marriage." I tightened a valve and stood. "That's not grief, Ethan. That's envy, turning into something dark. Watch her close." Martha's next move came at a family barbecue hosted by Christopher and Danielle at their estate down the road. I was there, setting up tables and stringing lights, when Martha showed up with Tiffany in tow. Tiffany, Ethan's ex, was all charm and designer sunglasses, but her presence was no accident. Martha made a show of it, parading her around like a trophy. "Oh, Tiffany was just in town," she said loudly, near where Lori was arranging salads. "I had to invite her." Lori's smile was tight, but she didn't take the bait. Ethan, flipping burgers, shot Martha a look that could have cut glass. I was hauling chairs close enough to hear him pull her aside. "Stop this, Martha," he said. "You're not fooling anyone." Martha pouted. "I'm just being friendly. Why is everyone so sensitive?" I kept working, but I saw Tiffany smirk, like she was in on the game. That night, as I cleaned up after the guests left, Ethan joined me, grabbing a broom to help. "I'm done with her stunts," he said, sweeping hard. Lori's stressed, and Jordan's starting to notice the tension. He asked why Aunt Martha's always mad. I stacked chairs thinking, "She's not just mad," I said. "She's trying to rewrite your life. Bringing Tiffany around, picking at Lori, it's all about control. You gotta shut it down, or she'll keep escalating." Ethan stopped sweeping, his face grim. I told her no more exes, no more games, but she just cries and says, "I'm abandoning her." I shook my head. "She's not crying for you. She's crying for herself. Don't let her guilt you into backing down." Martha didn't back down. She got bolder. I was trimming hedges one day when I overheard her on the phone, pacing the patio. Lori's not what she seems, she was saying. I saw her at the gym, always with a change of clothes, like she's sneaking around. Ethan deserves better. I froze, clippers in hand. The gym? Lori went every morning, same as half the women in Napa, showering and changing for work. It was nothing, but Martha was spinning it into a scandal. I told Ethan about it that evening as we walked the vineyard rows, the sun sinking low. She's building a story, I said. Trying to plant doubts. You know Lori's solid, but Martha's betting you'll second guess her. Ethan's fist clenched. Lori's my wife. I trust her, but Martha's making it hard to keep the peace. I nodded. Peace ain't her goal. Power is. The breaking point came at a family dinner, one of those fancy affairs with too many forks. I was outside, adjusting the garden lights, but the dining room windows were open and voices carried. Martha was at it again, this time with a new low. She waited until dessert, when everyone was relaxed, to drop her bomb. Ethan, did you and Lori sign a prenup? She asked, loud enough for the whole table to hear. The room went quiet. I paused, my hand on a light fixture, watching through the glass. Lori's fork stopped mid-air, her face pale. Ethan stared at Martha, his jaw tight. Why would you ask that? He said, voice low. Martha shrugged, all innocence. Just curious. You know, with how things are these days, people cheating left and right, she trailed off, smirking. Lori set her fork down, her voice steady but cold. What are you implying, Martha? Martha leaned back, sipping her wine. Nothing, just looking out for my brother. You're always at the gym, carrying extra clothes. Makes you wonder. I saw red, and I wasn't even in the room. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. Enough, he said. You don't get to talk about my wife like that. Lori's never given me a reason to doubt her, and you know it. Martha's eyes widened like she hadn't expected pushback. I'm just saying she started, but Ethan cut her off. Number, you're done. Apologize. Or get out. Christopher and Danielle, Ethan's parents, nodded in agreement, their faces grim. Martha muttered a half-hearted sorry and left her heels echoing in the silence. I caught up with Ethan later as I loaded tools into my truck. He was sitting on the garden bench, head in his hands. She went too far, he said. Questioning Lori's loyalty in front of everyone? I'm sick of it. I sat beside him, the night air cool. She's not just questioning Lori, I said. She's questioning you. Wants to see if she can break you two apart. You stood up for Lori tonight, that's good, but Martha's not going to stop. She's too deep in her own head. Ethan looked at me, his eyes tired but fierce. What's her endgame? Why she like this? I shrugged. Some people can't stand seeing others happy when they're not. Her life's falling apart. Brandon, the miscarriage, her ego, Lori's your light, and Martha wants to snuff it out. I didn't know then how far she'd go, how her envy would twist into something deadly. But out here in the garden, where I'd shaped the vines and tamed the weeds, I felt the weight of what was coming. Martha wasn't just a thorn, she was a blade, and she was sharpening it for Lori. I'd keep watching, keep talking to Ethan, because that's what friends do. And I'd be ready when the storm finally broke. Part 4. By the time Ethan's birthday rolled around in the spring of 2025, the tension in his family was thicker than Napa fog. I'd been working his vineyard gardens for years, watching Martha's vendetta against Lori grow from whispers to outright warfare. Out here among the roses and vines, where Ethan and I would talk as friends, I'd warned him about his sister's games. Her envy was a fire, and it was burning hotter every day. I'd seen her kind before people who'd rather destroy what they can't have than face their own failures. But even I didn't expect her to go as far as she did, to turn a celebration into a crime scene. I was there, trimming hedges and setting up lights, when it all went down, and let me tell you, it's a day I won't forget. The birthday party was a big deal, hosted by Ethan's parents, Christopher and Danielle, in their sprawling backyard. The place was decked out lanterns, long tables, a band playing soft jazz under the stars. I'd spent days getting the garden ready, shaping topiaries and lining paths with flowers. Ethan was turning 36, and Lori, glowing at 8 weeks pregnant with their second child, was by his side, radiant in a pale blue dress. Their son, Jordan, was running around with other kids, his laughter cutting through the hum of the party. It was the kind of night that should have been perfect, but Martha had other plans. I hadn't seen her in months. After the prenup stunt at that family dinner, Ethan and Lori had kept her at arm's length, and I'd told Ethan to stay firm. She's not your responsibility, I'd said one evening as we hauled compost in the vineyard. She's got to fix herself. Ethan had nodded, but family ties are tough to cut. When Martha showed up at the party, uninvited. I was pruning a hedge near the gate and saw her first. She was all charm, hugging Ethan like nothing had happened, her blonde hair catching the light. "I've missed you," she told him, loud enough for me to hear. Ethan stiffened, but let her stay, not wanting a scene. I kept my shears moving, but my eyes were on her. Martha approached Lori next, taking her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm so sorry for everything," she said, her voice syrupy. "I've been in therapy, working on myself. I want to make things right." Lori, ever gracious, nodded politely. "Let's just enjoy the night," she said, but I could tell she wasn't buying it. Neither was I. I'd seen Martha's act before tears one minute, venom the next. As I adjusted a string of lights, I caught her watching Lori, her face flickering with something dark. I made a mental note to tell Ethan later, but the party was in full swing, and I got pulled away to help with setup. The night was going smoothly until it was time to cut the cake. Ethan stood up, glass in hand, and gave a speech that made everyone smile. "I'm the luckiest man alive," he said, looking at Lori. "Another year with my best friend, my love, and now we've got more to celebrate." He paused, grinning, and Lori stood beside him, her hand on his. "We're expecting our second child." The crowd erupted cheers, claps, tears from Danielle. I was stacking chairs nearby, smiling to myself. Jordan bounced in his seat, excited about being a big brother. But then I saw Martha. She was frozen, her face pale, like someone had sucked the air out of her. Her eyes locked on Lori, and I swear, I saw hate in them, pure and raw. I didn't have time to dwell on it. Guests swarmed Ethan and Lori, asking about baby names and due dates. I got back to work, clearing plates, but I kept an eye on Martha. She slipped away from the crowd, her smile gone, and headed toward the food tables. I was too far to see what she was doing, but something about her movements, quick, furtive, set my nerves on edge. I'd learned in the Marines to trust that gut feeling, and it was screaming now. I started toward her, pretending to adjust a lantern, but she was already moving back to the party, a plate in her hands. That's when it happened. Martha approached Lori, who was sitting with Jordan, chatting with guests. "I wanted to bring you dinner myself," Martha said, her voice bright but off, like a cracked bell. "I'm so thrilled about your news, and I owe you for all the times I've been awful." She handed Lori a plate piled with food salad, chicken, and a big serving of shrimp. Lori smiled, polite as ever. "Thanks, Martha," she said, but then she froze, staring at the plate. I was close enough now, hauling a trash bin, to see her face change. "I'm allergic to shrimp," she said, pushing the plate away. "You know that, right?" Martha blinked, her smile faltering. "Oh, my mistake. I forgot. Let me get you something else." But Lori shook her head, standing. "It's fine. I'll grab my own." I was about to move on when Brandon, Martha's husband, walked over, looking worn out but trying to be cheerful. "Congrats on the baby," he told Lori, then glanced at the plate. "You not eating?" Lori sighed. "It's got shrimp. I'm allergic." Martha didn't know, I guess. Brandon, who loved seafood, shrugged. "Mind if I take it? Hate to waste good food." Lori handed it over, and I watched, my gut twisting again. Something wasn't right. I stepped closer, pretending to check a light, just as Brandon took a few bites. 5 minutes later, all hell broke loose. Brandon started coughing, his face turning red. He clutched his throat, gasping, and stumbled out of his chair. The band stopped playing. Guests froze, their chatter dying. "Brandon!" Martha screamed, rushing to him, but her eyes darted to Lori, wild and accusing. Ethan pushed through the crowd, kneeling beside Brandon, who was now on the ground, vomiting. "Call 911, someone shouted. I dropped my trash bin and ran to help, my training kicking in. Brandon was conscious but struggling, his breathing ragged. "What'd he eat?" I asked, looking at the plate. Ethan grabbed it, his face pale. "It's Lori's plate, the one Martha gave her." The ambulance arrived fast, sirens cutting through the night. Paramedics loaded Brandon onto a stretcher, and Martha followed, sobbing hysterically. But I saw her glance back at Lori, her tears not quite hiding the fury in her eyes. Lori was shaking, holding Jordan close, while Ethan tried to calm the guests. I stayed back, watching, my mind racing. Shrimp wouldn't do that, not that fast, not like that. I'd seen allergic reactions, and this wasn't one. This was something else, something deliberate. As the crowd thinned, Ethan found me by the garden shed, his face a mix of rage and fear. "What the hell just happened?" he said. I set down my tools, my voice low. "Martha gave Lori that plate, knowing she's allergic, but Brandon's reaction? That's not shrimp. I saw her by the food tables earlier, messing with something. You got cameras in the yard, right?" Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. "Yeah, my parents do." "You think?" He didn't finish, but I knew what he was asking. I think you need to check the footage, I said, and talk to Lori. She's scared, and she's got reason to be. We pulled the security footage that night, huddled in Christopher's study with Danielle and Lori. The cameras set up around the garden caught everything. There was Martha at the food table, slipping something from her purse into the shrimp on Lori's plate. Her movements were quick, practiced, like she'd planned it. Then she carried the plate to Lori, her smile a mask. The room went silent as we watched. Lori covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. She tried to hurt me, she whispered. And the baby. Ethan pulled her close, his face hard. She's done, he said. I'm calling the police. The cops came the next morning, after Brandon was stabilized in the hospital. Tests confirmed it. The shrimp was laced with a low dose of rat poison, enough to make someone seriously ill but not kill them outright. Lori would have been rushed to the ER, risking her pregnancy if she'd eaten it. Brandon, unlucky enough to take the plate, was recovering, but he was shaken. Martha was arrested at the hospital, still playing the victim, claiming it was a mistake. But the footage didn't lie, and neither did my eyes. I'd seen her hatred, clear as day, when she handed Lori that plate. Ethan and I talked the next day, out in the vineyard, the sun rising over the hills. I can't believe she'd go this far, he said, his voice raw. My own sister? I dug my boot into the dirt thinking, envy's a hell of a drug, I said. She couldn't stand Lori having what she doesn't to family, a future. But you stopped her, Ethan. You and Lori are stronger than her. He looked at me, grateful but haunted. Thanks for watching out, he said. If you hadn't noticed her at the food table, I shrugged. Just doing my job, but you gotta stay sharp. This ain't over. I was right. Martha's arrest was just the start. She had more secrets, more allies, and a plan that wasn't finished. Out here in the garden, where I'd seen the vines grow and the roses bloom, I knew the real fight was coming. And I'd be there with my shears and my silence, ready for whatever came next. Part 5. The Napa summer of 2025 lingered like a bad memory, but by the time the grapes were ripening, Ethan's estate felt like it was holding its breath. I'd been tending the gardens through it all. Martha's schemes, the poison on that plate, the chaos of her arrest. Out here among the vines, where I'd talk with Ethan as a friend, not just the hired help, I'd seen the toll it took. The Marines taught me to spot danger, but this wasn't a battlefield. It was a family torn apart by envy so deep it turned deadly. Martha's trial was coming, and while Lori and Ethan tried to move forward, the shadows of her actions clung to them like damp earth. I kept working, watching, knowing this story wasn't over. After the birthday party disaster, the police had Martha dead to rights. The security footage from Christopher and Danielle's backyard was damning her slipping rat poison into Lori's shrimp, her fake smile as she handed over the plate. Brandon, her husband, was still recovering in the hospital when the cops hauled her in. She tried to play it off, sobbing about a mistake, but the evidence was ironclad. Ethan and Lori were shaken, especially Lori, who nearly lost her unborn child to Martha's hatred. I'd catch her in the garden sometimes, sitting by the roses with Jordan, her hand on her belly, eyes distant. She was strong, but this had cracked something in her. Ethan and I talked about it one morning as I pruned the vineyard's overgrown vines. The sun was barely up, painting the hills gold. She's my sister, but she's a stranger, he said, helping me haul a branch. How do you hate someone that much? I wiped sweat from my brow, my shears glinting. She didn't just hate Lori, I said. She hated what Lori has your love, Jordan, the baby on the way. Her life's a mess, so she wanted to burn yours down. Ethan's jaw tightened. Brandon's pressing charges. My parents are done with her, but I keep thinking, what if Lori had eaten that plate? I looked him in the eye. She didn't. You protected her. Focus on that, not the what ifs. The trial came fast, a Napa spectacle that drew whispers from the winery crowd. I didn't go courts, aren't my scene, but Ethan filled me in, meeting me by the garden fountain after a long day in the courtroom. Martha took the stand, and what she said stunned everyone. She admitted everything, tears streaming, but it wasn't remorse. I was jealous, she said, voice shaking. Lori took Ethan from me. I wanted him to marry Tiffany, someone I trusted, not an outsider who stole his heart. When they announced the pregnancy, I lost it. I just found out I was pregnant too, but they stole my moment. She claimed the poison was meant to make Lori sick, not kill her, to teach her a lesson. The judge wasn't buying it, and neither was the jury. Martha's pregnancy was a shock. Ethan told me she'd kept it secret, planning to announce it at the party, but Lori and Ethan's news eclipsed her. That's why she snapped, he said, his voice heavy. She mixed the poison right there in a rage. I shook my head, tossing a clipped vine into a pile. Pregnant or not, she's dangerous. She didn't care who got hurt, Lori, the baby, even Brandon. Ethan nodded, his face grim. She's facing years in prison, Brandon's divorcing her, and my parents won't bail her out. Mom's heartbroken, but she knows Martha's got to face this. Brandon's recovery was slow, but he was a fighter. I saw him at the estate a week after his hospital release, looking thinner but resolute. He met with Ethan and me in the garden where I was planting new roses. "I'm sorry you got caught in this," I told him, setting down my shovel. Brandon shook his head. "It's not your fault. Or Lori's. Martha's been spiraling for years," and I ignored it. He turned to Ethan. "I'm pressing charges and moving on, but I'll always be family if you'll have me." Ethan clapped his shoulder. "Always, man." I watched them, thinking how Martha's poison had hurt her own husband most of all. Brandon didn't deserve that, but he was free now. Lori gave birth to a healthy girl, Emma, a few months later. I was there the day they brought her home, setting up a new flower bed near the patio. Jordan ran out, beaming, telling me about his baby sister. Lori looked tired but happy, cradling Emma while Ethan hovered, proud as ever. I gave them a nod, keeping my distance, but Lori called me over. "Thanks for everything," she said, her voice soft. "You saw what was coming when we didn't," I shrugged, brushing dirt from my hands. "Just doing my job. Congrats on the little one." But inside, I was relieved. They'd made it through the storm, at least for now. Martha's sentencing was the talk of Napa. She got 7 years for attempted poisoning and tampering with food, plus a restraining order to keep her away from Ethan's family. Ethan told me about it one evening as we sat on the vineyard stone bench, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine. "She tried to blame Lori," he said, his voice bitter. "Said Lori provoked her by being perfect." Can you believe that? I leaned back, staring at the stars. I believe it. People like Martha can't stand their own reflection, so they break the mirror. She's paying for it now. Ethan nodded, but his eyes were troubled. "She hinted at something in court," he said. "Said Tiffany knew more than we think, like they were planning together." That stopped me cold. Tiffany, Martha's old friend and Ethan's ex, had been a shadow in this mess, popping up at dinners and parties, always with that sly smile. I'd seen her at the birthday party, lingering near Martha, but I hadn't thought much of it. Now it clicked. "You think Tiffany's got her own agenda?" I asked. Ethan shrugged. "I don't know. She's been quiet since the arrest, but Martha's words stuck with me." I tapped my boot against the ground, thinking, "Keep your eyes open," I said. "Martha's locked up, but Envy doesn't need a key. If Tiffany's involved, she might pick up where Martha left off." Life settled for a while. Ethan and Lori focused on their kids, Jordan and Emma building a bubble of love around them. I'd see them in the garden, Jordan chasing butterflies while Lori pushed Emma's stroller, Ethan trailing behind with a grin. They invited me to a small barbecue to celebrate Emma's first month, a quiet affair with just family and close friends. Brandon was there, looking stronger, and we talked by the grill. "I keep replaying that night," he said, flipping a burger. "If Lori hadn't given me that plate," I set down my beer. "Don't go there," I said. "You're here, she's here, the kids are safe, that's what matters." He nodded, but I saw the weight in his eyes. Martha's poison had left scars on everyone. I kept working the estate, shaping the vines and tending the roses, but I couldn't shake Ethan's words about Tiffany. One afternoon, as I was mulching a flower bed, I saw her. She was parked across the road from the estate, sitting in her sleek convertible, sunglasses on, staring at the house. I froze, my shovel in hand, watching her watch them. She didn't see me, but I saw her, and it sent a chill down my spine. I told Ethan about it that evening as we walked the vineyard rows, the sun dipping low. "She's up to something," I said. "Maybe nothing big, maybe everything. You and Lori need to stay sharp." Ethan's face hardened. "I won't let anyone hurt my family again," he said. "Thanks for the heads up, man. You're more than a gardener, you're a brother." I didn't know what Tiffany was planning, or if she was planning at all. Maybe she was just curious, or maybe she was Martha's shadow, waiting for her moment. Out here in the garden, where I'd seen love grow and hate fester, I knew one thing: peace is fragile, and envy doesn't die easy. Ethan and Lori had their family, their love, their future, but the vines were still tangled with secrets. I'd keep my shears ready, my eyes open, because in Napa, the sweetest grapes always hide the deepest roots. Thanks so much for watching. Your likes, subscriptions, and comments mean the world, and keep these stories coming.